The Karvek raiders had always believed they were the strongest hunters in this part of the galaxy. For centuries, they had raided planets, plundered colonies, and crippled ships that dared to cross their path. They were feared by merchants, smugglers, and even by soldiers of lesser empires. To them, battle was not danger, it was routine. When their long-range scanners picked up a lone human starship drifting near the edge of a pale blue nebula, their warlord grinned. The vessel was not large. Its engines looked old, its shields faint, its weapons ordinary. To the Karvek, it looked like a prize already half broken. An easy hunt, the warlord growled, his voice rough like grinding metal. His crew hissed their approval. Humans are fragile. Their ships fall like paper. We will strip this one clean. For the raiders, it was never a question of victory. Only how much treasure they could take before the prey burned to ash. They had done this hundreds of times before. It was supposed to be simple, but inside the human starship, Captain Elias Ward already knew what stalked them. His face was calm, his expression unreadable as warning lights flickered across the bridge. He had fought pirates before. He had seen ambushes where allies had fallen, where civilians had begged for mercy, and found none. He knew the Karvek and their cruelty. He also knew something else. Humans, when cornered, were never as weak as the galaxy believed. The young officer at the comms turned pale as she read the incoming signals. "Captain, they're surrounding us. At least 6 ships, maybe more." Ward nodded slowly, his hands folded behind his back. "Let them come." His voice was steady, almost cold. Around him, his crew exchanged nervous glances. They were not a mighty fleet. They had no reinforcements waiting to save them. Out here on the edge of the nebula, they were truly alone. Yet none of them panicked. They trusted their captain, because he carried himself like a man who had stared death in the eyes before and learned how to make it blink. The first raider ships approached silently, their hulls dark against the stars, predators circling prey. Their weapons lit up like fireflies gathering charge. The Karvek laughed among themselves. Already they imagined the screams of their victims, the broken hull drifting lifeless. They had no idea the silence inside the human ship was not fear, it was preparation. The first strike came fast. Brilliant arcs of ion fire tore through the void and slammed against the human shields. The vessel shook violently, alarms screamed, and sparks burst from the ceiling. Crew members clung to their stations as the deck trembled. But Captain Ward did not flinch, he did not shout, he did not show fear. Instead, he leaned forward and spoke in a voice calm enough to be terrifying. "Hold steady. Do not return fire, yet." His order was strange. The raiders were pouring fire into them, but the humans held back. Shields flickered and groaned under the pressure. Systems failed, lights dimmed. Yet the human vessel drifted on, silent, refusing to break. The raiders grew louder in their mocking laughter. "Pathetic," they spat across their channels. "See how they cower. See how their ship crumbles." But on the human bridge, the silence was not cowardice, it was patience. It was the sharp inhale before the strike. Captain Ward's eyes never left the tactical display, where the raider ships were drawing closer, clustering around them like wolves tightening the circle. And then, with the faintest shadow of a smile, Ward whispered words his crew would never forget. "Let them think we are weak." The Karvek thought they had cornered prey. They thought this was just another simple raid, but they were wrong. Dead wrong. Because the humans were not waiting to surrender. They were waiting to strike. The Karvek did not wait. Once they saw the human ship drifting with shields flickering, they swooped in with hungry confidence. Their warlord, seated on a throne of twisted metal inside his flagship, leaned forward, his 4 glowing eyes narrowed with cruel delight. "Crush them," he ordered. The raiders obeyed. The second barrage came harder, faster. Red streaks of plasma and jagged bolts of ion fire hammered against the human vessel. The ship groaned, under the punishment. Metal tore along the hull, alarms screamed across every deck, and the engines coughed like dying lungs. Inside, the crew fought to stay steady. Sparks rained down from broken panels. One officer was thrown to the floor when the deck shuddered, blood on his forehead. Another clung desperately to her station, her hands shaking as she forced failing systems back online. But through the chaos, Captain Elias Ward stood like a pillar of stone. His voice cut through the storm. Damage report. Shields at 40% and falling fast, the tactical officer shouted. Starboard thrusters failing. Another violent strike shook the bridge. The crew flinched, but Ward did not. He raised his hand slowly, and the room seemed to steady itself, as if his calm alone was holding them together. Good, Ward said quietly. Let them believe we are breaking. The young officer, Mira, her heart pounding, turned toward him, in disbelief. Her voice cracked. Sir, if we don't respond, they'll destroy us. Ward's eyes, cold but steady, locked onto hers. Not yet. Outside, the raiders were laughing, their comm channels alive with cruel joy. To them, the humans looked finished. Shields flickered dangerously low, engines sputtered, and weapons remained cold. No counterattack came. The raiders expected panic, begging, surrender. They expected to hear the voices of prey crying for mercy. But across the calm silence of the human ship, there was nothing. No cries, no pleas, only the quiet hum of a vessel that refused to answer. The Karvik warlord snarled with amusement. Pathetic creatures, he spat. They are frozen with fear. They have no fight in them. He leaned back, already tasting victory. Board them. Bring me their captain alive. I want his eyes before I burn the rest. The raiders cheered, their smaller attack ships breaking formation to circle closer. They fired grappling harpoons and cutting beams, eager to tear open the hull and drag the humans out like cornered animals. On the human bridge, the crew felt the ship shudder again. The enemy was closing, pressing harder. Fear gnawed at their hearts. Officer Mira whispered under her breath, "This is it. This is where we die." But Captain Ward's voice broke through again, calm, commanding, filled with something heavier than hope. "Listen to me. We are not prey. We are hunters, who have bled more than they can imagine. We do not panic, we wait, we endure, and when the moment comes," he leaned closer to the tactical display, eyes locked on the raiders' formation as it tightened like a noose. His hand clenched into a fist. "We strike harder than they have ever seen." The crew looked at him, their fear slowly shifting into something else. Their breaths steadied, their hands grew firm at their controls. Mira wiped the sweat from her brow and nodded, her eyes burning with new resolve. The human ship shook again, battered and bruised, but still holding. The raiders were confident, blind in their arrogance. They thought the humans too weak to resist. They thought the end was seconds away, and still the humans remained silent. Silent, but watching. Silent, but waiting. Because Captain Ward knew the truth of every battle humans had ever fought, from the ancient fields of Earth to the cold darkness of the stars. The most dangerous moment is when the enemy thinks you are broken. The Karvik believed they were moments from victory. They were wrong. They had no idea that the humans were not standing still out of fear. They were luring the hunters into the perfect trap. The raiders believed they had the humans cornered. Their formation was tight now, 6 ships circling the lone vessel like vultures above a dying beast. Energy beams cracked against the human hull, cutting deep scars into its armor. Smoke drifted from broken vents. The Karvik warlord could almost taste victory. "Finish this," he growled, his voice rumbling across the comms to his fleet. "Tear them apart. Leave nothing but ash." The raider ships pressed in closer, reckless in their certainty. Their arrogance was a shield stronger than any armor. To them, this was no battle. It was a feast. But Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge of his battered vessel with the stillness of a man who had been waiting for this exact moment. His eyes never left the tactical screen where red enemy markers pulsed, closing in, moving exactly as he had hoped. He turned slightly to his crew. "Are the charges armed?" The tactical officer nodded, his hands trembling as he confirmed. "Yes, sir. All mines are primed and linked to your command." Ward gave the faintest nod. His voice was quiet, but every ear on the bridge caught the words, "Hold. Not yet." The ship rocked again under a barrage. Panels burst, filling the bridge with sparks. A medic dragged away a wounded crewman, blood smearing across the deck. Still, Ward did not give the order to fire. Still, the human vessel played the part of the dying prey. The Karvek warlord laughed, his jagged teeth glinting under the red glow of his command chamber. "Listen to them crumble, their ship will split open any second." He raised his clawed hand high. "Board them, strip their bones." And then, Ward's eyes narrowed. His hand came down like a blade. Now. The command was cold, sharp, final. In an instant, the dark void around the human ship came alive. Hidden mines, dozens of them, ignited in a brilliant web of light. They had been sleeping, cloaked by the nebula's interference, invisible to the raiders' arrogant sensors. Now they flared awake, spitting arcs of lightning across space. The closest raider ships were caught before they even understood what had happened. Energy surged through their hulls, frying systems, shattering shields. One ship spun helplessly, before bursting apart in a violent bloom of fire. Another was trapped in the electric net, its engines shrieking before it exploded. The warlord's laughter turned to a roar of rage. Impossible. No prey lays traps for the hunter. But humans did. Humans always did. On the bridge of the human ship, the crew erupted into cheers, their fear breaking into wild hope. Mira's eyes widened as she stared at the display of wreckage outside. "Sir, it worked. We caught them." Ward did not smile, not yet. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of every battle humans had survived through cunning and desperation. "This is only the beginning. They will regroup. Stay ready." Outside, the raider formation shattered. 2 ships destroyed, another, crippled, the rest scattering in confusion. The perfect circle of predators had become a storm of panic. Their comms erupted with angry, frightened voices. "This was supposed to be simple," one raider captain cried. "The humans, how did they—" "Silence!" the warlord thundered. His claws dug into the arms of his throne. His pride burned hotter than the flames consuming his ships. "Regroup. Crush them. I will not be defied by prey." But doubt had already crept in. For the first time in countless raids, the hunters had tasted something bitter, something they had forgotten long ago. Fear. Back on the human ship, Mira whispered half to herself. We can win this." Ward's gaze remained locked on the chaos unfolding outside. His face was grim, his voice low. "We will. But victory always comes with blood. Stay strong." The trap had been sprung. The first strike delivered. The galaxy's fiercest raiders had learned that humans were not prey to be toyed with, but the battle was far from over. The battlefield outside was chaos. Flames lit the nebula as 2 raider ships drifted in pieces, their wreckage glowing like dying stars. But the victory was not clean. The remaining Karvek regrouped quickly, their ships circling again with furious hunger. Their warlord's voice thundered across their channels, calling for blood, for vengeance, for the destruction of the human vessel that had dared to strike them. Inside the human ship, the crew clung to their stations, exhausted and shaken. Every man and woman on the bridge had sweat on their faces and fear in their eyes. The air stank of smoke and burned circuits. The lights flickered, and every few seconds the ship trembled as another blast rocked against its failing shields. "Officer." Mira's hands shook as she tightened her grip on the console. She had never seen battle like this. She had trained, yes, but training never prepared anyone for the sound of hull metal tearing under enemy fire, for the feeling of the ship trembling like a wounded animal under your feet. She swallowed hard, whispering to herself, "We can't hold them off forever. We can't—" Captain Elias Ward heard her. He did not scold her, nor did he speak with anger. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of iron. "Mira," he said softly, his eyes fixed on the chaos outside the viewport. "Do you know why humanity is still alive?" She blinked at him, startled by the question. "Sir?" We were never the strongest, Ward continued, his voice low but steady. Never the fastest, never the ones with the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons, but we are still here. Do you know why? Her lips parted, but no answer came. Around her, other crew members leaned in, listening, clinging to the captain's words in the middle of fire and death. Because we endure, Ward said. His voice grew stronger with each word, rising above the hum of broken systems and the echoes of enemy fire. Because when others give up, we fight harder. When we are cornered, we claw our way out. When the galaxy thinks we are finished, he pointed toward the viewport where raider ships swarmed like vultures. We show them what it means to face a human who refuses to break. A silence fell across the bridge. The crew stared at their captain, their fear turning into something sharper. Mira felt her chest tighten, not with terror but with fire. She straightened in her seat, wiping the sweat from her brow. Her voice, though quiet, carried new strength. Then we don't give up. Ward nodded once. That's right. We don't break. The ship shook again as enemy fire slammed against its weakened shields, but this time, no one cried out in panic. They held firm, their eyes locked on their stations, their hands steady. The words of their captain had carved something deep into them, reminding them of what they were: humans, survivors, fighters. Mira turned back to her console, her heart pounding with new resolve. She no longer felt like a frightened officer waiting for death. She felt like a soldier, standing with her captain ready to fight to the last breath. On the other side of the battlefield, the Karvek warlord growled as he watched the human ship refuse to fall. He saw the flickering shields, the wounded hull, and still they fought. Still they endured. What are these creatures? He hissed to himself. Why do they not die? Because humans did not die easy. Inside the battered starship, Captain Ward's voice echoed again across the bridge. Hold fast. They will strike harder now, but so will we. We fight, we bleed, we endure, until the last of them learns fear. The crew answered with silence. But it was not the silence of terror anymore. It was the silence of determination. The silence of people ready to stand their ground no matter the cost. The raiders thought the humans were broken. They thought the crew was moments from surrender. But as Mira glanced at her captain, and then at the burning stars outside, she realized something powerful. The heart of humanity was stronger than any weapon, and the Karvek were about to learn that truth the hard way. The battlefield burned with light. Broken raider ships drifted like dying embers, but the survivors had regrouped. The Karvek were furious now. Their pride had been wounded, and their rage was greater than their fear. Strike again, the warlord roared from the deck of his flagship. His claws slammed against the arm of his chair, sparks raining down from damaged lights above. Crush their bones. Show the galaxy that no one defies us. The raider fleet surged forward. Plasma cannons lit up the void, pouring fire into the human vessel. The ship shook under the assault, its shields failing, its hull splitting in places where armor gave way. Deck plates rattled, bulkheads bent inward. Oxygen hissed from cracked seams. Inside, the crew felt the ship bleeding around them. Some stations flickered and died. Smoke filled the air, choking lungs and stinging eyes. Yet not a single man or woman abandoned their post. Officer Mira gritted her teeth as her console spat sparks against her hands. Her voice was steady now, not trembling as before. Shields at 20%, weapons charging. Captain Ward stood firm, his boots planted against the trembling deck. His voice was low but sharp as a blade. Focus fire on their left flank. Hit them where they cluster, break their unity. The human ship swung wide, battered engines forcing it into a slow turn. Its cannons lit up, spitting streaks of light that cut through the void. One raider ship took the hit across its engines, bursting into flames before spiraling out of control. Another was clipped across its bridge, the explosion tearing it apart. The crew cheered, their voices breaking through the storm. Mira's hands flew across her controls, her face smeared with ash, her eyes burning with fierce determination. But the raiders kept coming. 3 ships broke through the debris, striking harder, faster. Their blasts tore through the human vessel's side, punching holes into the hull. Alarms screamed as compartments sealed themselves off, locking away both air and crew. The medic shouted, his voice breaking. "We've lost 20 in Section 4. The bridge went silent for a heartbeat. 20 souls gone in an instant. Faces the crew had known, now erased by fire." Mira's throat tightened, but before grief could take hold, Captain Ward's voice cut through the silence like steel. "They died holding the line. Honor them by fighting harder." The crew's grief hardened into fire. Tears streaked down dirty faces, but hands moved faster over controls. Every loss fed their resolve. Outside, the raiders pressed on, but cracks began to show. For the first time, their formation was sloppy. For the first time, they hesitated, darting nervously as the human vessel returned fire with uncanny precision. The warlord bared his teeth, fury boiling inside him. What are these creatures? Why do they fight with such madness? Because they were human. On the bridge, Ward leaned closer to Mira, his voice low so only she could hear. "Do you feel it?" She blinked, sweat running down her face. "Feel." "What, sir?" "The shift," Ward said. His eyes glinted with something dangerous. "They are afraid." Mira looked again at the tactical screen. The raiders still outnumbered them. The human ship was burning, shields nearly gone, and systems failing. But she saw it too. The hesitation, the sliver of doubt that had crept into the raiders' movements. "Yes," she whispered, almost in awe. "They're starting to doubt." Ward straightened, his voice rising for all to hear. "This is our moment. They think we are weak. They think we are dying. But we will show them what humanity does when cornered. Ready all weapons. Push everything we have." The crew roared, as one, their voices filling the bridge. They no longer felt like prey waiting to be devoured. They felt like a blade drawn from its sheath ready to cut. Outside, the human ship turned into the storm, its guns blazing. Another raider ship exploded under the barrage. Another fled into the shadows, too damaged to continue. The hunters were losing their grip. And for the first time in centuries, the mighty Karvek raiders felt something they had forgotten long ago. Fear. The turning point had come. The void burned with fire. Wreckage floated across the nebula like glowing bones. 4 raider ships lay destroyed, their flames painting the stars with violent light. Yet the battle was not over. The Karvek warlord, his pride torn and his fury unchained, rose from his throne. His 4 glowing eyes burned with hate. He had watched his unstoppable hunters falter. He had watched humans prey, tear through his fleet. Enough. With a savage roar, he slammed his claw against the arm of his command chair. "Forward!" he screamed. "My flagship will end this. I will crush them with my own hand." The massive, warlord ship surged out of the chaos, its armored hull scarred but unbroken, its weapons burning with deadly light. It dwarfed the human vessel like a predator looming over a wounded animal. Inside the human starship, silence fell as the flagship approached. The crew stared in dread at the tactical screen. Its size, its power, compared to their battered ship, it looked invincible. Mira's voice cracked. "Captain, our shields are nearly gone. Hull integrity at 30%. If that thing hits us." She couldn't finish. Captain Elias Ward did not look away from the viewport. His face was calm, carved with iron. He had expected this. "Then we will not let it strike first." The bridge shook violently as the flagship opened fire. Beams of burning plasma ripped across the void, slamming into the human vessel. Shields shattered with a scream of energy. Metal tore. Whole sections of the ship went dark as power failed. The crew staggered, some thrown to the floor. A medic rushed to drag a wounded officer away. Smoke choked the air. Still, Ward stood tall. His voice carried through the chaos. "All power to weapons. Aim for their reactor core." The tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, if we miss..." Ward's voice cut through, sharp and final. "We won't," the crew obeyed. Every remaining ounce of energy was ripped from engines, from life support, from auxiliary systems, and funneled into the ship's weapons. The vessel groaned like a dying beast, but its guns glowed brighter than they had all battle. "The Raider," Warlord laughed, his deep voice echoing across the void. "Look at them. They cannot run. They cannot hide. They will be nothing but ash under my fire." He opened fire again, tearing deeper wounds into the human hull. Flames erupted in corridors. Dozens more crew were lost. The ship's spine bent under the strain, and for a moment it seemed as if it would finally shatter. But then, Ward's voice rang out, steady as ever. "Fire!" The human ship unleashed everything it had left in one blinding volley. A lance of pure energy cut through the void, sharp and merciless. It tore through the flagship's weakened shields, slicing deep into its armored hull. The shot struck the heart of the beast, the reactor core. For a single breath, the Warlord's eyes widened in shock. "No," he growled, voice shaking with disbelief. "This cannot—" And then his flagship erupted. The core went critical, exploding in a storm of fire brighter than a sun. The blast wave tore across the battlefield, scattering debris and silencing every raider who had dared remain. On the human ship, the crew shielded their eyes as light filled the bridge. When the glare faded, only silence remained. The flagship, the monster of the raider fleet, was gone. The surviving raider ships, stunned and leaderless, fled into the shadows of the nebula. The hunters were broken, the legend of their invincibility, burned away in fire. Mira stared at the viewport, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with disbelief. We did it." Ward finally let out a long breath, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "No. They did it." He glanced at his crew, bloodied, battered but alive. Humanity did it. The crew erupted into cheers, voices cracking, tears falling. Against all odds, against all reason, they had stood against the galaxy's fiercest predators, and won. The final blow had been struck. The Warlord was no more, and the stars would never forget. The battlefield was silent at last. The roar of weapons, the scream of tearing metal, the thunder of explosions, all of it had faded. Only drifting wreckage remained, glowing faintly in the blue light of the nebula. The human starship hung in the void, broken and scarred. Fires burned in its corridors. Smoke curled from shattered hull plates, and half its lights were dead. It looked less like a warship and more like a wounded survivor, clinging to life by sheer will. Inside, the crew sat in silence. The cheers that had erupted when the Raider flagship exploded were gone now, replaced by the heavy weight of what had been lost. Dozens of seats were empty. Whole sections of the ship were sealed off, filled with silence that would never be broken again. "Officer," Mira sat at her console, her hands trembling. She had survived, but so many had not. She could still see their faces. She could still hear their voices. Her throat ached with grief. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of the bridge, his shoulders heavy, his uniform stained with smoke and blood. He looked around at his crew, those who remained, and felt the same weight pressing on his chest. Victory had come, but victory always carried a price. The medic broke the silence. His voice was rough, tired. "We've lost 83, sir, maybe more. Damage is critical. But we're alive. Alive." The word felt strange. In the middle of all the death, it was a small miracle. Ward closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the bridge like a steady flame. "Honor them. Every name, every face. They stood. They fought. They endured. Remember that." Mira's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Around her, the crew straightened, their grief settling into something deeper, something that would not fade. Outside, the wreckage of the Raider fleet drifted like broken bones. The Karvek had fled, shattered and leaderless. Their pride was gone, Their legend of invincibility had been burned away by one battered human vessel. The galaxy would hear of this. Stories would spread, whispered first, then shouted across stars. The Karvek thought humans were prey. They were wrong. They struck a human ship, and it was the last mistake they ever made. Ward turned toward the viewport, staring at the endless stars beyond the wreckage. His voice was low, almost as if he was speaking to the fallen themselves. They thought we would break. They thought we would bow. But humanity doesn't die easy. Not in the past. Not today. Not ever. The words settled over the crew, heavy and true. Mira wiped her face and whispered, "Sir, do you think they'll come again?" Ward did not look at her, his eyes still on the stars. "Yes, someone always does. There will always be another enemy who thinks we are weak, another predator who mistakes silence for fear. That is the nature of the galaxy." Her voice shook. "Then what do we do?" Ward finally turned, his gaze sharp, his voice steady. "We endure. We fight. We teach them the same lesson again and again until they finally understand. Humanity does not break." For a long moment, silence hung on the bridge. Not the silence of fear, nor of grief, but the silence of resolve. The silence of people who had been tested by fire and had come out harder, sharper, unbroken. Mira placed her hand over her console, her jaw set. Around her, the crew did the same, one by one, each ready to carry the burden forward. The human starship drifted slowly out of the nebula, broken but alive. Behind it, the wreckage of the mighty raider fleet marked the stars like a warning, and across the galaxy, the story spread. They thought attacking a human starship was simple. They were wrong. It was a story not of strength, not of power, but of something greater, the unyielding heart of humanity.